October 16, 1946, Nuremberg prison. The air was bitterly cold, seeping from the gray stone walls. Inside the execution waiting room, 10 defendants were being called one by one. Hermann Goering, the man who had hidden a cyanide capsule in his handcuff, chose to end his life before the execution order could be carried out. But the others had no such choice. They were called in order. The first was Joachim von Ribbentrop, 53 years old. Ribbentrop had once been a prominent figure. As foreign minister under Adolf Hitler, he had signed treaties that redrew the map of Europe and brought authoritarian regimes closer together. But before the court, he argued that he had merely followed orders. At 1 a.m., American officers opened the cell door. The silence was broken only by the metallic click of iron keys. Joachim von Ribbentrop stepped out. Polished black shoes, a neatly pressed gray suit, a stiff shirt collar. He walked slowly, eyes straight ahead, showing no expression. An eyewitness, U.S. Army Guard John C. Woods, later recalled, "He didn't flinch. His eyes were vacant, as if he knew exactly what was coming." Entering the final room, Ribbentrop remained upright, head unbowed. When asked for any last words, he responded in German, "God protect Germany. God have mercy on my soul. My final wish is for Germany to be united and for peace in the world." These final words were recorded in the execution log. According to the official record, the duration of his execution was longer than usual, the longest that night. No funeral was held. His body was cremated along with the other condemned men. But one question remained unanswered. What did that drawn-out death say about justice or about humanity? What made him hold on to his belief until the very last moment, even as the world he served crumbled around him? August 1939, Moscow. Inside a closed chamber at the Kremlin, German Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop signed a non-aggression pact with the Soviet representative Vyacheslav Molotov. This document, later known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, signed on August 23rd, took the international diplomatic community by surprise. Two major powers with opposing ideologies, one on the far right, the other aligned with communism, were now formally cooperating in an agreement that would alter the strategic balance of Europe. British diplomats and French politicians had not anticipated such a development. The treaty included a public commitment. Germany and the Soviet Union would refrain from hostile actions against each other for the next 10 years. However, attached to it was a secret protocol outlining the division of spheres of influence in Eastern Europe. Under the terms of that agreement, Polish territory was divided. The western part came under German control, while the eastern region fell within the Soviet sphere. The three Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, along with part of Romanian territory, were also included in the Soviet Union's expansion plans as specified in the protocol. This arrangement not only redrew pre-war boundaries, but also allowed Germany to concentrate its military forces to the west, while the Soviet Union moved to solidify its control in the east. Just over a week later, on September 1st, 1939, German troops invaded Poland. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war on Germany, officially marking the beginning of World War II. The pact shattered Western hopes that the Soviet Union would stand. As a counterbalance to Nazi Germany's expansionist ambitions, this event left Western leaders in a position of surprise and passivity. They had believed that Berlin and Moscow would confront each other, not sit at the same table. Joachim von Ribbentrop, acting under Hitler's directive, was the representative who signed the pact. With just a few sheets of paper, he helped eliminate the threat of a two-front war and enabled Germany to restructure its military planning along a single front. The Moscow Agreement not only altered military strategy, but also redrew the entire geopolitical landscape of Europe, marking the beginning of a prolonged crisis. In September 1938, at the Munich conference, Joachim von Ribbentrop was present during negotiations that determined the fate of Czechoslovakia. With Germany, Britain, France, and Italy participating, the conference ended with the Sudetenland being ceded to Germany without a single shot fired. Ribbentrop, although part of the German delegation, was dissatisfied with the outcome. He had favored an immediate military, strike over diplomatic concessions. In a moment that revealed his aggressive mindset, he remarked, "First-class stupidity. All it means is that we have to fight the English in a year when they will be better armed." That statement exposed a Ribbentrop, more radical than even Hitler himself, a stark contrast to the diplomatic image the public had associated with him at the time. Beyond Munich, Ribbentrop was the principal architect behind the Axis alliance system. Beginning in 1936, he pushed for the anti-Comintern Pact between Germany and Japan, later bringing Italy into the fold. By 1940, he had solidified this alignment with the Tripartite Pact, formally linking Germany, Italy, and Japan in an effort to isolate Britain and France, while gradually shaping a three-power military alliance, with ambitions to alter the global balance of power. Ribbentrop didn't stop there. He expanded Germany's alliance network by bringing Hungary, Romania, Slovakia, Bulgaria, and Finland into its sphere of influence. These moves helped form a transcontinental axis under Berlin's control, increasing strategic pressure on the Allies and paving the way for Hitler's hegemonic ambitions. Ribbentrop's role in the policy framework toward the Jewish population was one of the key focuses at the Nuremberg trials. As foreign minister, he sent numerous diplomatic notes to Germany's allied nations, urging the implementation of racial laws and supporting resettlement programs within their borders. In these official communications, he used administrative terms such as resettlement or labor mobilization, deliberately concealing the real intent behind the forced transfers to territories controlled by the German authorities. Ribbentrop's relationship with the Soviet Union also exposed contradictions in his thinking. Although he had signed the Non-Aggression Pact with the Soviets in 1939, he once expressed to them, "Please tell Stalin I was against this war." Ribbentrop made no secret of his hostility toward Britain, and even hoped to persuade Stalin into forming an anti-British alliance rather than confronting the Soviet Union. Though this preference never materialized, it revealed a deeper layer in his strategic mindset. As a senior figure in Nazi Germany's foreign policy apparatus, he did not rule out cooperation with Moscow, prioritizing the isolation of Britain above all else. As the war escalated, the diplomatic structures Ribbentrop had helped build gradually became political entanglements, leading to severe consequences for the nations involved. Joachim von Ribbentrop was born on April 30th, 1893, in Wesel within the German Empire. His father, Richard Ribbentrop, was an officer in the Prussian army, and he was raised in an environment of strict discipline. His mother, Sophie Hertwig, came from a wealthy landowning family. Ribbentrop's childhood was marked by constant relocations between various cities. He attended multiple schools and was exposed to a variety of cultures, from Germany to France and later Switzerland. At Lycée Faber in Metz, Ribbentrop honed his French and English. He became fluent in both languages. Some described him as overly confident, though not particularly strong in academic thought. His family life was not without difficulty. After his father was dismissed from military service, the family's social standing declined significantly. They moved to Switzerland, where Ribbentrop continued his secondary education. In 1910, at the age of 17, he left Europe for Canada. There, he worked in commerce and became familiar with North American culture. From construction to import businesses, His time in Canada allowed him to master English and gain a deeper understanding of international trade. However, he did not form deep ties with any particular community. When World War I broke out in 1914, Ribbentrop returned to Germany. He joined a cavalry regiment and served on the front lines. During one campaign, he sustained a minor injury. His service earned him a military decoration, a common reward in the German army at the time. Toward the end of the war, he was stationed in Constantinople, where German forces supported the Ottoman Empire. His experiences across Europe and North America, in both peacetime and war, helped him develop flexibility in communication. He also gained broad exposure to international politics, though not remarkable in either military or academic achievements. He began to establish his own influence in post-war diplomatic circles. Ribbentrop gradually gained access to Berlin's power circles through carefully calculated moves aimed at elevating his social standing. In 1920, he married Anna Elisabeth Henkel, the daughter of Otto Henkel, from a prominent family that owned a successful wine and sparkling wine business. Through this marriage into a wealthy producer's family, Ribbentrop expanded his business ventures and built a network of contacts among the upper class. Some critics would later describe him as a man who advanced more through style than through substance. In 1925, Ribbentrop took a bold step to solidify his status. A distant relative adopted him, granting him the right to use the noble prefix von, a mark of distinction in German society at the time. From Joachim Ribbentrop, he became Joachim von Ribbentrop, entering the conservative aristocratic elite under a new identity. This noble title allowed him access to circles of power traditionally closed to the middle class, even though many within the elite saw him as an opportunist. In 1928, Ribbentrop was introduced to Adolf Hitler, a meeting that would mark a turning point in his political trajectory. By 1932, he and his wife had joined the Nazi Party. Ribbentrop quickly became a close associate, valued for his loyalty, foreign language skills, and organizational abilities. He used his luxurious home in Berlin to host private gatherings attended by political figures, industrialists, and high-ranking officials. These meetings played a logistical role in the political maneuvering. That led to Hitler's appointment as chancellor in 1933. These gatherings helped Ribbentrop secure his place within the emerging power structure. Hitler appreciated Ribbentrop for his handling of foreign affairs. Though not known for strategic or ideological depth, he was adept at leveraging social opportunities to serve the Nazi leadership. He played a behind-the-scenes role in organizing many diplomatic events, from formal receptions to international negotiations. While some insiders in the regime saw him as heavy on image, light on strategy, Ribbentrop managed to maintain a significant position. In 1934, Joachim von Ribbentrop began his diplomatic career as Special Envoy for Disarmament. Officially, he advocated for peace, attending international conferences to discuss arms control. But behind the scenes, he quietly pushed for the rebuilding of Germany's military capabilities, directly contradicting the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. In 1935, he negotiated the Anglo-German Naval Agreement, which allowed Germany to build a navy up to 35% the size of the British Royal Navy. London viewed it as a concession in the interest of peace. For Berlin, it was a significant step toward rearmament. Around the same time, Ribbentrop promoted the formation of the Anti-Comintern Pact, a nominal alliance against Bolshevism. In reality, it marked the first step toward forging strategic ties between Germany, Japan, and Italy, laying the foundation for the Axis alliance in the years to come. In 1936, he was appointed German ambassador to the United Kingdom, bringing with him an ambition to persuade London to form an alliance with Berlin against the Soviet Union. However, he quickly became a disappointment. Ribbentrop's arrogance and lack of diplomatic finesse alienated British officials. He once had uniforms tailored according to German ceremonial standards, which offended the British aristocracy, an act widely seen as tone-deaf and culturally insensitive. The low point came in 1937 when Ribbentrop made an inappropriate salute during a formal audience with King George VI. The gesture, performed at 7:50 a.m., was diplomatically awkward and poorly received on both the British and German sides. Many colleagues described him as lacking strategic vision and frequently causing discomfort at official events. Within British diplomatic circles, he was viewed as clumsy and out of touch with the political atmosphere. A personal rumor further undermined his diplomatic image. He was accused of having an affair with Wallis Simpson, the mistress of King Edward VIII, and was suspected of gaining access to unofficial information through this relationship. Although no concrete evidence was ever presented, the rumor sparked concerns within official circles about his conduct and role as a diplomat. Even within the Nazi Party, the alleged relationship was believed to have potentially damaged the regime's international image. When he left London in 1938, he did so with a deep sense of resentment toward Britain. That emotional response would influence many of his future diplomatic decisions. Other diplomats, those from Germany's traditional diplomatic corps or British officials, operated with greater finesse and a deeper understanding of international politics. What ultimately kept Ribbentrop in the system was his unwavering loyalty to Hitler. It was this loyalty, rather than any particular skill or vision, that secured his place in the Nazi apparatus. His style was often described as superficial and lacking strategic depth, an approach that frequently backfired in complex diplomatic situations. Within the Nazi hierarchy, Joachim von Ribbentrop was a divisive figure. Many veteran diplomats considered him clumsy, lacking negotiation skills, and better suited to hosting banquets than conducting statecraft. Goering once mocked him as more of a champagne salesman than a statesman. Heinrich Himmler referred to him as a second-rate diplomat. Yet Hitler kept him at the helm of the foreign ministry. It wasn't necessarily due to his diplomatic skills, but rather his near-absolute loyalty. Ribbentrop was known for signing documents without question, as long as they carried orders from above. This unquestioning obedience made him an effective instrument for expanding Nazi influence. As foreign minister, he played a key role in building alliances with Italy, Japan, Hungary, Romania, Slovakia, Bulgaria, and Finland. Beyond military cooperation, he also pushed allied countries to adopt racial legislation, often through bilateral diplomatic exchanges. Romania serves as a clear example, where discriminatory laws were enacted shortly after his official visit. Ribbentrop also contributed to the legal framework supporting population transfers in territories controlled by Nazi Germany. The diplomatic memoranda he oversaw frequently used administrative terms such as resettlement, civilian security, and war labor. These phrases, later examined by historians, were found to be tied to the forced deportation of Jewish populations to centralized areas under German control. These documents were stamped in Berlin and sent to embassies and international partners. On paper, everything appeared to be routine administrative procedures. According to post-war records, many of the documents bearing his signature were later linked to large-scale forced deportations. However, his influence did not last. In 1941, when Hitler decided to launch Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union, Ribbentrop was reportedly opposed to the plan. He expressed concerns about its long-term consequences and believed it contradicted the Non-Aggression Pact he himself had signed with Stalin 2 years earlier. Some historians suggest he may have attempted to convey a warning to Moscow through unofficial communication channels. This marked a turning point. Hitler and the military leadership began to question his loyalty. Although he retained the title of foreign minister, Ribbentrop's actual influence over high-level decisions declined sharply. From 1942 onward, his role began to fade. His foreign policy initiatives were largely ignored, and key strategic discussions took place without his involvement. By late 1944, Hitler limited contact with him and delegated most responsibilities to other aides. In May 1945, as Berlin collapsed, Ribbentrop left the capital in silence. He assumed a different identity, Herr Reiser, and moved through the chaotic final days of the war. 6 weeks later, on June 14, 1945, he was arrested in Hamburg by Allied forces. Once the head of foreign affairs for the Third Reich, Ribbentrop ended his political journey in isolation, far removed from the system that had once elevated him to its highest ranks. In the courtroom at Nuremberg in 1945, Joachim von Ribbentrop sat among the highest-ranking defendants of the wartime German regime. He was charged with crimes related to initiating war and with forging treaties that served discriminatory and repressive policies. Though visibly fatigued, he maintained a calm demeanor. Prosecutors presented a series of documents bearing his signature, from the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact to diplomatic notes concerning population resettlement and civil security in German-occupied territories. Before the tribunal, Ribbentrop denied personal responsibility. He claimed he had merely followed orders as a diplomatic official when asked whether he would have acted differently. If given the chance, he insisted he would still obey under the same circumstances. That cold reply came to symbolize absolute loyalty, devoid of remorse or reflection. Many observers believed that statement reflected the core of the regime itself, a system where loyalty was paramount and personal responsibility dissolved into bureaucratic memoranda. In that structure, a single signature could mark the beginning of a sweeping campaign, and for Ribbentrop, this was considered part of his official duty. On October 1st, 1946, the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg found Ribbentrop guilty on all charges and sentenced him to death. In the early hours of October 16, 1946, he became the first defendant to be executed. According to post-war records, the execution did not proceed smoothly due to a technical error, which caused it to take longer than usual. His body, along with those of the other executed men and Hermann Göring, who had taken his own life, was cremated, and the ashes were disposed of at an undisclosed location to prevent them from becoming a rallying point for extremist movements after the war. Ribbentrop's death marked the end of a man once, at the center of the Reich's most consequential diplomatic agreements. He left behind no ideals, no apologies, only a thick file of decisions that history could not ignore. You are watching Case X. Thank you for joining us on this journey through historical records. If you found this content valuable, consider subscribing so you won't miss our upcoming analyses. See you in the next episode.